Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. Do you ever wonder if the relationship that you have with your mother, or like your mother figure, we'll say, because it doesn't have to be a biological mother, of course, whoever raised you, have you ever wondered if that relationship is normal, right? Quote unquote. Are you curious as to how the way you related with your mother, or the way your mother related to you, more accurately in childhood, how that has impacted you as an adult? Because mother-daughter relationships can really be complicated. And in this episode, that is what I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be breaking down 7 different types of dynamics that I've seen in my almost 30 years as a clinician, plus the lasting impact that each one of these types can have on your adult relationships. And, obviously there's things that we can do to change that, but the most important thing, what we're going to be doing today, is identifying that. So, the types of mothers and the emotional impact they have. Now, I get questions like this all the time about, in my community and in my courses, women struggling in their relationships with their mothers, even as adults. So there can be a lot of shame, guilt, and longing associated. If you have dissatisfaction, or if you are disconnected, right, from this primal relationship, it's a primary relationship, it really is in our lives, whether it's bad or whether it's good, whether it's harmful or whether it's helpful. This is one of the reasons it's so important for us to process and understand what our maternal experience was growing up, to honor the feelings and the experiences, no matter what they might have been. And I think that right away, we start with the societal pressure around mothers and around, if you had a problematic mother, how so much at the time, listen, this is not new. We hear this. People go, hello, you only have one mother. Now, if you have a mean, narcissistic, unwell, addicted mother, and someone says you only have one mother, you think to yourself, thank Christ that there isn't two. And you can't say that sometimes, So it's also important that it doesn't have to be your biological mother. So let's just get that out of there right now, right? You could have been raised by an older sibling. You could have been raised by your grandmother. And what matters is the dynamic between you, how that person treated you, right? Sometimes I say maternal impactor, but it's really mother or mother figure, and you know who that is, the person who influenced you in that way. And there's tons of different ways that these relationships can play out, right? In all kinds of different mothers. Think about your friends growing up, and didn't each and every one of them have a different experience? Mine definitely did. What I hope for you in this episode is you learning about the archetypes that I've seen can help you understand how it may have impacted you and how it may be impacting you right now in your adult life. First archetype is the role reversal, where if you assumed the role, sort of the mother role or the maternal role for your mother at a young age. Maybe you did it for younger siblings, right? So this could be your primary dynamic. So it's really being parentified is what we would call it therapeutically, and it is extremely painful when this happens because it can create this deep fear of abandonment wound, which manifests in adulthood as really like a never-ending seeking of safety in relationships and a desire to control outcomes and feeling states of other people. A lot of HFCs, high-functioning codependents, have had this experience in childhood, right? Codependency can really be fueled by this role reversal dynamic. And another thing that it does, if you were parentified, you were also scanning rooms, right? So you may be very dialed into the people in your life. You might be very empathic. You might be very understanding. You might be really attuned to others the way your mother may not have been for you. So a lot of times these dysfunctional experiences that we have in their own ways create superpowers within us of what we can actually do in the world in the way that we relate to other people. This extra empathicness, this highly sensitive nature that we may have if we were parentified, we need healthy boundaries for it to really be a superpower, right? Because I was like an empath without boundaries in my 20s. And as much as, people appreciated my empathic nature, it was incredibly exhausting and bandwidth draining for me. I feel like with parentified daughters, though, it can be really hard to take care of themselves in a real way, right? Struggling with self-compassion, struggling to build real self-consideration or self-love, because, again, these are all strategies for survival, right? If you became a parentified child, you did it because there was a need for you to do it. So these survival strategies, again, every single one of them, they're adaptive until they're not. So they maybe worked really well to keep you safer than you would have been in your childhood. But then it turns into all this overfunctioning in adulthood that's absolutely exhausting and most of the time not even sustainable forever and ever because it's too tiring. All right, the second archetype is where there was hot and cold. So was your mother someone who didn't herself have a lot of emotional self-regulation? So this could look like erratic behavior. It could look like excessive emotions that affected her ability to be consistent in her mothering, right? If there's, anger, anxiety, depression, sort of the up and down of it all growing up, you may have had the experience of never knowing what you were going to get. And again, you want to talk about what flexes the hypervigilance muscle in a kid having an erratic parent. Absolutely, and mother in particular. So the unpredictability of this mother type really creates this chaotic home experience, right? It's so stressful when you don't know. And, there's studies, and I can't remember what the study was right now, other than saying if a child is in a relationship where the parent is consistently neglectful or abusive, let's say, there's no hope for it being different. Right? So in a way, on your nervous system, even though that's awful for a child, but it's not as taxing as not knowing what you're going to get. Because there's this hope that you're going to get the good one. You know what I mean? It just creates all this adaptability in kids. That said, you may have difficulty yourself if you had an erratic mother emotionally with bad or not healthy self-regulation. You may have difficulty managing your own emotions, right? Because you didn't have a good role model to show you how to do it. And we're also missing co-regulation there. So you yourself might be overwhelmed by anger or anxiety or depression because no one taught you how to do it. When you think about what a mother in particular, fathers too should help children co-regulate. But if the mother is the primary connection to the child, they're supposed to be co-regulating with you, meaning when you're upset, they don't get doubly upset, right? They are the calm to your upsetness. And it's how we learn how to do it, is from them. So if you had an erratic mother, a hot and cold mother, you probably didn't learn how to do it. And there was no modeled behavior. The next archetype is the self-focused or the self-obsessed mother. So this mother usually, a lot of times there can be a narcissistic element here where the mother does not see the children separate from herself. Rather, she sees the kids as an extension of herself. And I'm not talking about just regular self-absorption. We're talking about it to the extreme. So the family will organize around the self-obsessed parent, right? Rather than around the children. So we know this, I've talked about this before, that in healthy family systems, the system appropriately organizes around the well-being of the children. When you have a self-focused or self-obsessed mother, the system organizes around that person. And when you are the child of a self-obsessed mother, you learn that it's not your place to, shining is for other people, right? Nobody's throwing you a parade for what you're doing, right? Instead, your job becomes to lift the parent up. And this is how we learn to manage other people in our lives. We learn. We are not in our own experience. We are externally focused on making sure that they feel good about themselves. A lot of times you end up being a loyal supporter in your grown-up life of other people, and that you are like in the front row cheering other people on. You might also be a great problem solver because you probably weren't getting help, right? And your friends might seek advice from you if you were someone who had a self-obsessed mother, because you're really good at figuring stuff out, because you figured out how to stay out of the line of fire there. So the fourth archetype is the mother as bestie. So if your mother saw yourself as her best friend, and hey, I'm not saying that we can't have loving and friendly, like I have a super devoted relationship with my mom who's almost 89, but I wouldn't say that she was my best friend, because the things that I talk about with my best friend, for me, will never be appropriate for me to talk about with my mother. So when you think about what friends talk about, would I want my mother talking to me about sex with my father? I would not. I really wouldn't. It creates this imbalance too, when there's sort of a mutuality where your mother is sort of wants to hang out with your friends, or like treat you, have inappropriate conversations with you. This kind of mother-daughter dynamic itself, this creates disordered boundaries for sure, that we just can carry them into our adult lives. And when you have a mother who wants to be your best friend and sees herself that way, it can make the differentiating, right, the separating and differentiating process even harder, right? Because there can be this fear of rejecting your mother, where a lot of times when kids you get to be teenage years, right? Why do you think that people always talk about teenagers being so sassy, or, getting into trouble or acting out? When we look at it from a developmental point of view, it's looked at as separating and individuating, right? This is how we become our own people, is that we separate and individuate. But if you have a mother who doesn't really parent as much, right? Because the mother as bestie, it's a burden, and you might feel neglected by her because you're not equals, right? You're the child, and in a healthy mother-daughter union, you're not worried about that, right? Because if she's your friend, you have to consider her as much as she's considering you. And the reality is, children should not be considering parents as much as parents should most definitely be considering children. Okay, the fifth archetype is the perfectionist, and this is the very controlling mother, fearful, hypercritical, anxious, and they can be anxious of them, all of those things about themselves and about their children, right? So having a perfectionist mother is very painful, right? Because you end up feeling like you can never get it right. We all know, if you are a recovering perfectionist, how painful it really is to have a standard that is so high that you can't even meet your own standards. And when you have a mother who's a perfectionist, nothing was ever good enough, right? And you might just bring that directly into your life now. Because think about what perfectionism does for us. It sucks the joy out of our experiences, right? Something that goes 98% amazing, but you can't stop focusing on the 2% that didn't go exactly the way you wanted it to go, that absolutely sucks. It makes you not enjoy the 98% that went great. So, listen, perfectionism, there's also the flip side, which is a lot of times when you're a perfectionist, all right, I'll give you props. You actually really do know how to get stuff done, right? You are reliable and responsible, and in your relationships and at work, and those are good things. But I think that it's important that we make the distinction between perfectionism and striving for excellence, because they're not the same thing. And striving for excellence is a great way to be. But when you're raised by a perfectionistic mother, a lot of times she ends up passing down that ailment to you, and you end up living it in your life. And number 6 is the good enough mother. So this is the mother who knows that she doesn't have to be perfect for her kids to thrive and be resilient, right? The kind of mother who clearly is the parent, doesn't need anything from her kids besides respect and the connection that they have, right? So kids are free to be themselves if you have a mother who knows that it's the showing up part that matters. So she isn't perfect, but she does not burden you with her emotions, right? She knows how to regulate herself. There's a balance with a good enough mother where she understands what her role is and that she prioritizes the kids in an appropriate way, but she's not looking to the kids to fulfill her needs, right? She's getting that elsewhere with her friends or in her marriage or wherever it is. But if you grew up with this type of mother, you're blessed because there was room for you and space for you to grow and for you to change and be your own person and to explore and to make mistakes. There's an inner sense of safety and security if you have a secure attachment with this type of mother. I do myself. I feel, that I was blessed to have. Many of you know I have a father wound, but my mother was that type of mother who just knew how to do it. And I don't know how she knew how to do it. She had 4 daughters under the age of 6 by the time she was 26, and with no help at all, right? This was very 1950s marriage where she did absolutely everything, and there wouldn't even be a thought of having a nanny, or maybe we'd have a babysitter once in a while, but it was all on her. And yet she was able to see us all as separate beings, and that we didn't need to perform for her necessarily. And so anyway, I put that archetype in because here's the thing. There's a theory about good enough mothering. Oh, God, who was it? And I can't even think of who created the theory so long ago. Who was it? Oh, this is menopause, people. You have no brain cells. But anyway, and it's really showing up, and that love, just really loving your kids. You can make mistakes. The kids are super resilient. That showing up and safety, creating safety for children, went so much further than, the perfect white picket fence or the perfect diorama at the science fair. You know what I mean? It really is about, do kids feel emotionally safe? And that's really what, secure attachment makes you feel, that you can be yourself and you can make mistakes, and that there's still a place for you with your mother. Okay. And the last type is the rejecting or unavailable mother. And this is a mother who couldn't meet your needs. So your physical, emotional needs as a kid, you might have grown up feeling rejected, feeling unloved. I was just watching something the other day about a famous artist who passed away that my husband knew because she had been a teacher of his at Parsons. And she did these amazing, huge paintings for years, and so motivated artistically. And she had a mentor, and she said, yeah, we met each other because we both realized that our mothers didn't like us. And I think that is more common than the rejecting mother is more common than you may think. And I was reading about Eleanor Roosevelt and how she had a very rejecting mother, as I was doing the mother wound course, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And that to sort of goof on her, the mother and the grandmother used to call her Granny because they felt like she looked like an old lady and wasn't pretty. Eleanor Roosevelt, who went on to do the most incredible feats in the world, being a woman during a time where it was just unbelievable what she was able to accomplish. And she did all of that despite having a rejecting mother. But these early attachments, why are we talking about mother wounds? Well, part of it is you asked me to. Another part is that soon I am going to be teaching live my mother wound course, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But these early attachment experiences really impact how we relate in our relationships and how we relate to ourselves. So you may have always known something was sort of off in your relationship with your mother. In the guide, I'm giving you a bunch of things that you can check out about these archetypes. So if you want to more sort of fully explore where you might fall into this, if you want to go deeper in this, I invite you to look at Understanding and Healing the Mother Wound course, which is starting soon. And for this course, this is literally the step-by-step process that you need to heal your mother wound, whatever the mother wound actually is. So just if you're interested in that, go to terricole.com/mother wound, and I'll make sure to put that link in the show notes. And I would love to see you on the inside of the Mother Wound course. That would really be an honor and a privilege to walk you through it. If this added value to your life, this podcast, share it with someone who you think it may help. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.